Hey, welcome everyone to our second informational webinar for the NSF TechAccess AI Ready America program. The second webinar, just like the first one, is focused on the State and Territory Coordination Hubs solicitation, which is NSF 26-508. Two quick reminders before we get started are that the letters of intent for the solicitation are due on June 16th, and the full proposals are due on July 16th, both at 5 p.m. local time. And if any questions come up during this webinar, please use the webinar Q&A to post your questions, and you can also continue emailing us at ai-ready@nsf.gov. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide, and here's our agenda for today. We'll start out by highlighting a few key pieces of the program to set up for the rest of today's webinar. As a reminder, the official source of information for the program is in the solicitation itself. But you may also find it useful to view the first webinar if you were unable to attend it live. It was held last week on April 14th, and you can access the recording and the slides through the program initiative page, whose link you can see on this slide. And I believe in a moment in the chat, we'll also connect you to direct links to these slides and maybe also the recording. For the second part of today's webinar, we'll be hearing remarks from our federal partners. We're very excited to have all of them joining us today. And after that, we'll have a Q&A panel with the NSF program directors for this program. So for that panel, we've received many questions through the webinar registration, through the Q&A from the last webinar, and also questions into our inbox. And we'll be trying to address as many of those as we can today. If you have additional questions as you're viewing the webinar, again, put them in the Q&A. And if we don't get to your questions, feel free to email us. The recording for today's webinar will be posted on that same initiative page. It should be posted within the next week. And we also hope to have frequently asked questions posted on the initiative page over the next few weeks. All right, next slide. So to start with a very brief program overview to frame what the program is and where the coordination hubs fit in. So the mission on the next slide, the mission of the TechAccess AI Ready America program is to expand access to AI knowledge, tools, and training so that individuals, small businesses, civic organizations, and the broader workforce can fully participate in and benefit from the AI economy. We define AI Ready in this program as the continuum of literacy, proficiency, and fluency, or understanding AI, applying it appropriately, and ultimately creating with it. And also very importantly for us is making sure that we're always asking the question of why AI and when AI. Next slide. So the program has three components. The first one are the state and territory coordination hubs, again, the focus for today, where we will be supporting one per state and territory. And I'll clarify that I'm not sure how clear this image is over here, but it really is all of the territories, even if you don't see all of them listed here. And the purpose of these coordination hubs is to connect partners, strengthen planning and deployment, and scale what works. We will also be supporting a national coordination lead to elevate shared needs and best practices across hubs. And we will have AI Ready Catalyst Award competitions, which are topic-driven competitions to quickly address areas of high national needs. The solicitation that we have currently out is for the coordination hubs, and the funding calls for the national lead, and also for the first of the Catalyst Award competitions should be released in the near future. Next slide. So coordination hubs serve as the center of statewide coordination in this model of this program. And we're asking teams to stand up 5 core responsibilities or core functions within these coordination hubs. So the first is an AI learning and resource navigator, which is a user-friendly inventory of training, infrastructure, and other supports. The second is state and territory AI readiness strategy, a strategic plan, co-created with stakeholders with data and evaluation as part of it. The third area is AI deployment support, which is hands-on assistance to entities that don't have the AI expertise in-house at the moment. The fourth area is AI readiness, training and capacity building to coordinate K-16 and workforce systems to expand access and align credentialing. And the last area is coordination and priority sectors to align partners on adoption strategies, needs, and shared resources in sectors that are of high priority to the given state and territory. So coordination hubs are welcome to also address additional areas of responsibility if they have additional resources to do so. These are the 5 that will definitely be required, and we do expect that additional areas will be found that are needed, but the initial support is for these 5 areas. Okay, next slide. So as a reminder about how we view what a strong coordination hub lead should look like. So strong leads will typically demonstrate statewide presence and convening power across education, workforce, industry, and government. They'll have strategic partners across sectors and existing networks. So if we click again there, so a variety of strategic partners. So everyone can plug into what's going on across the state and territory. And then AI expertise collectively across partners for technical implementation and training know-how. So as a reminder here, we're not expecting that a single lead organization would be able to do all of these pieces. Collaboration is going to be essential with key partners to be able to do this. But the national lead should be an organization that's going to be able to gather the set of partners to be able to carry on or carry out these types of functions. Okay, and ultimately we're looking to more effectively and quickly reach out across the US to the full range of beneficiaries that we're looking to be part of this effort. All right, so this program is being launched by NSF in coordination across the TIP Directorate, EDU, and SIZE, and with the federal partners listed here, Department of Labor, US Department of Agriculture, and the Small Business Administration. And on to the next slide. So as a reminder, this is our working group across NSF and our federal partners. And it's important to note that our federal partnerships are helping to ensure intentional information sharing and alignment of interconnected efforts across our agencies. Our current focus for NSF, together with our federal partners, is in leveraging existing trusted networks, as well as new and ongoing AI initiatives, and coordinating closely throughout the program. So we'll be hearing in a moment from the federal partners who will each highlight the AI readiness initiatives and state and local networks that proposing teams should consider engaging with as you build your coordination hub teams. So on to the next slide. So with this context, I'll now hand it over to our federal partners. And we'll start with Rubella Goswami, who's the Deputy Director for the Institute of Youth, Family, and Community at the US Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture.
Thank you, Mikhail. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of NIFA. USDA NIFA is pleased to partner with NSF and the other federal agencies on this TechAccess AI Ready America initiative because it aligns very closely with our mission to connect research, education, and extension with real needs in the country. From NIFA's perspective, one of the most important things about AI readiness is that it has to be broad-based. It needs to reach our rural communities, our agricultural producers, our educators, families, small businesses, and young people. And one of the best ways to do so is through institutions and networks that are already trusted in those places. It should not be limited to just a handful of well-connected technology centers. So I will refer to the land grant system, and when I refer to it, I mean there are institutions that were our 1862 land grant institutions that are there, universities that are there in every state, our 1890 land grant institutions, historically Black colleges, our 1994 tribal land grant institutions, along with their integrated missions of research and extension education, and the cooperative extension service that is based in the land grant institutions, including the 4-H network. So this is a whole ecosystem, and this ecosystem also collaborates with other entities, with entities like the Hispanic Serving Institutions. There are community-based organizations, and those are the places where we will really reach the people where they are. So together, these institutions deliver a lot of scientific innovation, workforce preparation, youth development, community-based problem solving. So the solicitation states that NIFA will partner, as a partner, will connect the coordination hubs with the land grant and extension network, as well as NIFA's investments in research, education, and extension. So the real opportunity here is to connect the many strong efforts that are already underway and make them easier for communities to access the use. So if there is one message I wanted to emphasize to prospective proposers is that the job of these coordination hubs is not to start from scratch. The solicitation actually describes each hub as a convening entity that connects all the local partners across education, workforce development, and the government, and leverages the established networks, the assets, and organizations in every state or territory. It facilitates the knowledge exchange and enables scaling of successful AI adoption efforts. And it also says that where there is already strong coordination, the hubs should complement them rather than duplicate them. So from NIFA's perspective, the hub opportunity is about helping states to connect those pieces coherently together. NIFA, like a lot of our other partners, has AI-related investments in many, many different areas. A few examples are like our AI research institutes that NIFA funded. They have a lot of efforts that are ongoing, so bringing those efforts connected into the hub. Then there are our grantees in the AI who are working in the AI space, bringing those program supports. In fact, there is a solicitation that just closed on this strengthening agricultural systems, which will also bring the K through 12 group into the realm. So and additionally, on the education side, there are a lot of efforts as well that are going on. So as you are thinking of putting together your proposal, keeping all these in mind, and if you are not familiar with the land grant system or our land grant universities in your state, you can feel free to reach out to their leadership, to the experimentation directors, to our extension directors, to the 4-H leaders in the university in your state. And then just asking questions like, what are the efforts you are doing, will help you connect those. And we would be happy to help as needed. So from our standpoint, the whole thing is we would encourage you to view the whole ecosystem as a core part of your strategy as you are putting your proposals together, and the opportunities of the coordination hubs to connect it, to align it, and make it easier for states and territories to scale up what is already. So that's the primary message I would have from USDA's side, is make sure as you are preparing your proposals that you bring in all the entities that are there in your state. I think with that, I will sign off and hand it over back to Mikhail. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Rubella. So next we will hear from Nathan Putnam, who is the Senior Policy Advisor at the Small Business Administration.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm incredibly excited and grateful to NSF for all of the partnership and collaboration up to this point around this really important effort. And thanks to all of you for your interest and attendance at this webinar. So, small businesses are really the backbone of the American economy, and an AI-ready America requires AI-ready small businesses. And so the NSF coordination hubs will really be a key component of a coordinated federal government approach to ensuring that small businesses are AI literate, AI ready, and ultimately AI enabled. And so make no mistake, and probably contrary to popular belief, small businesses are actually accelerating their adoption of AI and are really starting to close the gap with the larger businesses. They even lead in some use cases, according to our Office of Advocacy. As such, we've seen that awareness in AI isn't the primary barrier. Instead, it's really applicability and implementation barriers. So the question becomes, how do we scale this kind of capacity building that works for small businesses? For example, use case translators, technical assistance providers, capital and commercialization on-ramps, et cetera. And so our approach has been to really execute public-private partnerships. For example, our AIU effort in collaboration with Google, which trained our Small Business Development Center counselors on AI for small businesses, ran clinics, did one-on-one counseling. That's one part, and the second part is to really leverage our existing extensive resource partner networks to deliver for entrepreneurs in their communities, because they're the ones that know the local context and possess those really meaningful, trusted small business relationships. And so, this shouldn't be done just in isolation. We try to take a no wrong doors kind of networked activation model, where these really complementary assets and resource partners work together to create a broader activation layer and referral network that strengthens our capacity to provide assistance to entrepreneurs, regardless of their geography, regardless of their stage in their technological adoption journey. And I think the NSF coordination hubs will really allow for the connection of this activation layer that already exists, to the 5 coordination hub responsibilities and then ultimately the broader AI support ecosystem. So, what are SBA resource partners that make up this activation layer that potential coordination hubs should be aware of? So obviously the small business development centers are called out and have been mentioned, but I'd like to give a quick overview of our, broader SBA resource partner network that potential awardees should be aware of, and then a quick very brief overview of their function within our network. And so the small business development centers, 800 service centers across the US, 63 lead centers that are the trusted advisors with the broad reach in the communities and high frequency engagement with small businesses. We also have our federal and state technology partnership program partners that have deep expertise in commercialization and navigating the federal innovation space. We have regional innovation clusters that are sector-specific networks with ties to industry, capital, research institutions. We've got Growth Accelerator Fund competition awardees that are the most entrepreneur-facing and implementation-oriented resource partners, especially for early stage and scaling firms. And then we've got women's business centers that provide counseling to women. We've got veterans business outreach centers that provide counseling to veterans. We've got our Service Corps retired executives program that provides one-on-one counseling. But all of these resource partners are embedded in their local economies and are already advising small businesses on financing, operations, and technological adoption. So, all of these networks can really be the front door to small business entrepreneurs and innovators that the coordination hubs can then leverage to extend their reach beyond their physical location. So, as you're building out your coordination hub teams, remember that SBA has a really vast statewide, local, and ultimately nationwide footprint, ready to be leveraged to ensure that small businesses across the US become, AI-enabled small businesses. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to NSF.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathan. So next we'll hear from Taylor Stockton, who is the Chief Innovation Officer for the Department of Labor.
Great. Well, thank you to the National Science Foundation for having me, and thank you to all the individuals across the country joining the webinar. My name is Taylor Stockton. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of the U.S. Department of Labor. Maybe to take a step back, DOL's mandate overall is to support and enhance the welfare of American workers. And so I think on our side, as AI transforms the economy across every single industry, we have a huge opportunity and obligation to really think about how to modernize programs and policies to help workers navigate all of those changes. And so for that reason, DOL is really proud to partner with NSF in this TechAccess AI Ready America program. And, on our side, we believe that this is going to be one of the most significant coordinated efforts across the country to really build AI readiness and scale. And DOL is fully committed to making sure that the existing workforce and education infrastructure that we've built over several decades is fully available to support all these really great efforts across the country. And so what I'd like to just do is maybe take a few short minutes to name some of the specific DOL programs and networks that proposing teams should know about and actively consider as you build out the strategies for your hubs. On the program side, one of the largest ones that we wanted to name is that as a part of DOL's overall priority of expanding AI literacy across the country, we released DOL's AI literacy framework earlier this year, which outlines our belief of the 5 foundational content areas and 7 delivery principles that we see as being particularly effective when thinking about AI skill development efforts. And so we're eager to see if there are ways for different coordination hubs to really build on top of that and use it as a foundational resource that you might further tailor for your context, your industries, your communities. The second specific program that I wanted to mention that definitely relates to the AI literacy front as well was the program that DOL launched just a month ago, which was called the Make America AI Ready Initiative. So very similar branding to this. And at its core is an AI 101 course that American workers can take entirely over text message, but just by texting the word ready to the number 20202. And so just in the last few weeks, we've already seen over 30,000 Americans enroll and complete that course. And so we're excited to see if that can also be a foundational resource that may be relevant to some efforts. And then on the network side, I think there's a tremendous number of state and local education workforce networks that DOL oversees that could be relevant to this network. But the main one that I would highlight in this conversation is the American Job Center Network. And so more than 2,300 locations operating in every state and territory across the country and already serving workers who are oftentimes in career transition, looking to build new skills. And so for any of these hubs, as they're thinking about training, capacity building, deployment support, we believe that American Job Centers are the most direct connection to the workers this program is likely designed to reach. And so we would strongly encourage every proposing team to think about the AJCs in their network, in their state, as a potential core partner, as well as the different other local and state education workforce entities that may be relevant. And so taken together, there's a lot of different initiatives and networks that are on DOL's purview, and we're really excited again to think about how we can support every team to the existing workforce infrastructure that's there. And so thanks again to NSF, and we're really excited to support this initiative and expand its impact in whatever way we can. So thank you, and back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Taylor. And thank you to all of our federal partners on this program. I hope that hearing them speak just a little bit about their various AI initiatives and programs and the networks that are already in existence that have been around for decades, many of them, just how much there is to leverage as you work on building out your coordination hubs. And again, really to emphasize that piece that this is not looking to replace what is already out there. It's looking to connect across what already exists to leverage to find gaps. So that hopefully gives you some additional places and ideas of what to reach out to and what to leverage. And we're very excited to be working together with our 4 federal agencies together, which really will reach the group of beneficiaries that we're looking to reach in this program. So we're going to go on first to 3 frequently asked questions that have been coming in a lot into our inbox, and then after that we'll do the live Q&A. So the first one I will hand over to Greg to address.
Thank you, Mal, and thanks everyone for being here on this webinar and for your interest in the AI Ready America program. We've received a number of questions about which AI tools and infrastructure are supported and recommended, along with how tooling should be selected. So I guess to answer that, the AI Ready program does not recommend or prioritize any specific AI tools or models or infrastructure. Instead, we're looking to coordination hub proposers to identify the tools and the resources that will best align with their professional, economic, educational, training, and community needs within their particular state and territory. Similarly, tool selection should be driven by whatever is going to enable broad AI adoption and supporting of the workforce development and will facilitate effective real-world deployment in their specific state and territory. So we're not going to say or dictate any of that. We're actually looking to the proposers to tell us what's the most appropriate in their case. But we are also, as I think you've gotten from hearing from all the other agencies and what was said before, there's a lot of emphasis on trying to leverage the extensive set of programs and projects supported by the NSF and our partner agencies. So the state hub should coordinate among whatever is relevant among these existing capabilities, such as tools or infrastructure, whether it's provided at the local, the state, or national levels. So whatever capabilities makes the most sense. And so there's many forms of infrastructure that could be relevant to state hubs. For example, the NSF provides access to large-scale research computing resources via the Access program. And in addition, more specifically oriented towards this program, for AI-related projects, the NAIR facilitates provisioning a broad range of computational and data resources, including a mix of federally funded and industry providers. So down at the bottom of the slide, there's a link for more information on the NAIR, and so you can find out more about that. There's also a link with information on a broad range of NSF programs that relate to the artificial intelligence focus area. So the state hubs, we're highly encouraging you to collaborate with programs like these to support your state's needs. If a state or territory determines that some infrastructure needs to be deployed or provisioned as part of the proposed budget, that's allowed. NSF will leave it to the applicants to determine the approach that will work best for your specific state or territory. And with that, I will pass the baton to Nasser to talk about these questions.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you everyone for being here. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. The question that I would like to address is regarding to how will the program support AI education across K-16 system? I want you to think about that NSF supports a wide range of programs in K-12 and even in higher education. And the idea here is not to replace those programs, but to build on them. The coordination hub are really meant to leveraging this existing effort, both NSF funded as well as others, to help all Americans engage with AI economy. This particular solicitation about the coordination hub does not directly fund research or education research in K-12 or higher ed, but instead it focuses on connecting and scaling what already exists out there. That means the hub should be well connected across the state, including strong partnership with educational institutions at all levels. If you are interested in learning more about current funding efforts in this space, I would like to encourage you to look at NSF AI workforce development. The link is provided on the slide. And there are a lot already happening that this program is meant to build on. More broadly, this program is trying to move AI education beyond just the classroom. It's about coordinating and creating a coordinating approach that links education, workforce development, industry, as well as the public sector, so people can actually apply AI in real world context. With that being said, I would like now to hand it back to my colleague Mikhail to go over the next question.
All right, thank you. So I am going to attempt to address the eligibility question, which we addressed in the first webinar, but seems like not fully enough because we continue to receive a lot of questions about it. So hopefully this clarifies a bit more. So for eligibility, the institutions that are eligible are higher education, nonprofit organizations, tribal nations. And then we have the ones that are not eligible. So that's individuals applying independently, foreign organizations, and federal agencies. Then there's a group that is in the maybe eligible category. And I think that's where the real confusion has come in. So this is for-profit organizations and state or local government agencies. So if you submit a proposal from one of those groups, so the maybe eligible or the eligible, you will get through to our review process. The issue that may come up for you is once you're at the stage of being able to, if you are selected for receiving an award and you are an organization who has not previously received funds from NSF, then you will need to go through the new awardee process. And so we have the resources linked on this slide of what that entails. So what you will need to think about before you apply as the lead is, do you have the systems, the processes, the internal controls that are needed to be able to manage a federal financial assistance award, which remember, these are all going to be the federal financial assistance awards, which go under the uniform guidance or the 2 CFR 200 guidance. So unfortunately, we can't go through all of the details to explain to you exactly what that means because we just don't have the time to do that here. So please look at the information for first-time awardees within there, or you can go directly to the link that we provided over here for prospective new awardees. There's very helpful checklists in addition to general information that will hopefully guide you through what is it that NSF will be looking at to assess whether you're able to take on this type of award. Now, remember that if your organization, hopefully that's helpful. If not, just keep reaching out to us and we'll try to clarify further. Remember that if you're not able to, we have many examples of successful collaborations, certainly with for-profits and also with local and state government agencies and offices where they did not receive the funds directly, and instead they received it in other ways. So you can still collaborate in really effective ways, and we hope that you will join these proposals, as your participation is absolutely essential, actually, how we see it, to the success of this program. All right, so we're going to go into our Q&A session now, and I'll hand it to Alana to introduce this, and then we'll go ahead.
Thanks very much. Yeah, my name's Alana. I'm part of the team here, and I'll be moderating some of the questions. So we've been seeing in the Q&A box, as well as those that were submitted ahead of time, some to the email. and from our first webinar as well. So if you are sending us emails, please know we're working through that, and we are trying to get you all answers just as soon as we can. So this is one of those questions that we've been seeing quite a bit, and I'm going to ask Michal to speak a little bit about it first. In preparing the proposals, what kind of infrastructure budgets should proposers prepare for? What kind of infrastructure costs are allowed here? If you could speak a little bit about that.
Sure. So the first thing to note is that in terms of infrastructure, so it is allowable to it's allowable to use some of the funds for infrastructure. In the PAPPG, it states that you can use up to 20%, and it lists the various categories of what can be counted as infrastructure. So I suggest that everyone looks in there for the exact items that are listed. The consideration, if you choose to do that, is to convince yourselves that that is where the key gap is for your coordination hub. And that would be a good use of the funds. Okay, and I guess we're not all getting spotlighted over here, so that's okay. So so you're welcome to do up to 20%, but there may be questions about whether that's the good use of the funds. And for the 5 areas of responsibility for the coordination hubs, that's the primary area that you need to be, those are the primary areas that you need to be focused on. So if you're not using all the funds towards that, then you do need to make the case that you can support all of the other work in other ways.
Thank you. The next question pertains to cost share. And I'm going to ask Greg this first, and if anybody else wants to chime in, just a little bit about what kinds of cost shares proposers should be thinking about and how we define voluntary cost share at the NSF.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, there's been quite a number of folks who've sent in.
Oh, Greg, sorry, I think your audio just started to cut out.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
There we go.
So, no, yeah, we've gotten a bunch of questions that are related to cost share and what's allowed and what does that look like, et cetera. Basically, in a nutshell, the NSF does not allow formal cost share for most proposals, including this one. So, what that means is you cannot include cost sharing in the budget information you provide with your proposal. But that said, we know that organizations may wish to provide additional resources beyond the funding requested from the NSF. So any participant in a state hub proposal may, at their own discretion, contribute any amount of voluntary uncommitted cost, but you cannot document that cost share in the budget nor the budget justification documents. So basically what that means is you are allowed to do cost sharing, but you can't put that formally into the budget and budget justification for the proposal. That's disallowed. These are basically guidance we get from the National Science Board. So that's pretty much true for most all of NSF competitions. So just to restate, cost sharing is not required and it cannot be documented within your proposal budget. But if you do wish to provide cost sharing, you may do so, but just don't include it formally in the proposal budget. And if anyone wants to add anything, feel free.
I'll add something that I think addresses another question, a related question, which is how can you let us know about that? So about your co-funding efforts. And so that will be within the proposal narrative itself. You can describe who the collaborators are and what they will be contributing in terms of resources, which in most cases they will be contributing something. And then in your letters of collaboration, so anything that is listed in your narrative, you should have a letter of collaboration from that organization to confirm that there really is support. But just remember that there's a standard letter to follow, which basically just says, yes, what was put into the proposal is correct.
I can also add one more note here that proposal will not be evaluated more favorably if they have a indicated or include a cost share, and reviewer will be instructed not to consider this as a merit factor when they evaluate the proposal.
Great. Thank you all so much for those thorough answers. Nasser, you're off mute. I'm going to ask you this question to start off, and if there's anybody else who wants to chime in. We've gotten some questions about, the situation can rapidly change with AI over time. So what kind of flexibility do proposers have in their outline proposal of the activities that they want to do versus how those priorities and how they carry those out might change throughout the duration of the award? Could you speak a little about the flexibility of activities over the 3-year period? Thanks.
Thank you, Elena. Per PABG, the scope of the project can be adjusted after the award. However, that need to be coordinated with NSF, meaning prior approval need to be coordinated with NSF as well as the national lead. And these requests are usually submitted through research.gov. So adjustment that do not alter the fundamental scope of the project, the goals and objective, such as refining activities, timelines, or implementation approach. These small adjustments can be made without prior approval. However, project scope that require substantive changes require prior NSF approval in coordination with the national lead. Again, minor adjustment, no need for reaching out to NSF to request a change, but major one does require NSF approval in coordination with the national lead, and the requests need to be submitted through research.gov. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have anything to add in there, or should we go to the next question? Okay. So in terms of eligibility requirements, we're getting some questions about how are the state and local territory hubs separate from the national lead. So if we could just speak a little bit more about the requirements for an organization who might be thinking about which competition to submit to, and how they should be thinking about first this state territory coordination hub solicitation that's coming out versus the national lead. So Michal, if you could just talk a little bit about the requirements there and what's allowable in terms of submitting to this current solicitation for the state territory hubs and then the national lead solicitation.
Sure. So we can only speak to it to a certain extent because the national lead funding call is not yet out. So when that is out, then it will be made much more clear what the characteristics are that we're looking for the national lead, which are going to be, I'd say, quite different than for a state and territory coordination hub. What teams at the moment would want to consider is we have received, I believe, some questions about, do you have to be a state or territory coordination hub to apply for the national lead? And not only is that no, actually that won't be allowed. We want these to be separate institutions. And we would assume for the most part that an organization who is well suited to be the coordinating function for a given state or territory is probably not going to have that national reach. I'll just add that you are allowed. So if there's an organization that is, waiting for the national lead funding call to come out and is wondering how to interact with the state and territory coordination hub proposals, you can absolutely do that. Join those for now. At a later point, if your organization is selected to be the national lead, then we may need to make some adjustments because the national lead will need to be made available to all of the coordination hubs. I think that's really all I can say at this point. I'm not sure if that fully addresses the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And another one we're getting very similar to that is if proposals will automatically roll over and what submission looks like from one round to the other for the state territory coordination hubs.
Okay, so I'll address that also. So proposals will need to be submitted for each round. They will not roll over. But when it says that there's a limit of one proposal per institution, that's in a given round. So you can submit in the first round, and if your state is not selected, then you can submit again.
Great, thank you. Nasser, I see you came off mute. Do you have any comments related to this one, or should we go ahead and move on to the next?
You can go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So, somewhat related to, I'll ask Greg this one first, and then we can everybody can chime in. But a lot of folks are wondering how within their state should they connect to some of the partners, such as, you know, organizations related to our federal partners that we've heard from here today, local partners across the state. If we could just talk a little bit about ideas for getting connected and different organizations across different sectors coming together for this proposal.
Sure. Thanks, Alana. Yeah, so I've seen some questions that specifically kind of focus a little bit more onto the cooperative extension service related to that. So as we heard earlier, the Department of Agriculture helps support extension services across all the states, and they're basically oriented to help with interactions across their entire state. It might be having extension agents that might be in every county or in every region within a state, and they might be helping farmers and participating in educational activities with things like 4-H or even performing some research. And so in practice, the extension agents, that whole network is pretty extensive in every one of the states, and it's partnered with the land grants normally within each of those states. So leveraging these kinds of networks, we think that should be able to help a lot with achieving AI-ready goals. So we encourage proposers to consider how would they work with these extension agents or these extension services. Similarly, we also heard about small business development centers that also have similar kinds of networks, along with DOL kinds of networks. So all of these sorts of networks provide a lot of, well, if you will, boots on the ground to have lots of interactions. And so we're trying to leverage all of this to the maximum extent possible, coordinate amongst all of them to maximize the reach. And so instead of asking the hubs to build out all of these sorts of networks on their own, by leveraging all these, we think that can make them be able to scale up and scale out much more efficiently, much more quickly, and help us to achieve these goals of really reaching every American and helping them to become AI ready. And so, yeah, we would definitely encourage you to look at all the potential networks that are available in your states. And anyone want to add?
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. So I think a related question to that we've been receiving is, will NSF be helping with that coordination building? And the answer is that at this time, we will not be doing that. We are looking for all of you within your state and territory to reach out to each other. We do hope that we've had some pretty broad outreach for this program to local and county government and state government, and to other organizations that have a national reach, but also have local reach, I guess. And so there, hopefully through those organizations, you'll be able to connect with each other, and maybe you'll have local convenings. And then of course, through our federal partners, they're all aware of this. So that the state organizations through the federal partners. So we are hoping that sort of on the ground that will happen, and that there will be convenings hosted at the state level and at the territory level. But NSF at this time and the program at this time is not able to support that effort.
Okay. Thank you so much for those answers. And somewhat of a related question that we've received is if you could talk a little bit about how communities are going to be made aware, the general public might be made aware, what role NSF has in this, and what we're expecting of the state and territory coordination hubs in terms of reaching their communities and making sure that those communities are aware of what's going on with this program. And anybody who wants to take that first, I think can go ahead.
So I guess I'll start us off here. So we really see that as a primary function of the coordination hubs to make sure that there is that extensive reach. So as you're thinking about how to build out your coordination hubs and what metrics and indicators you would use to assess whether your reach is as broad and as in depth as you're intending for it to be. Think about who the partners are who you need to have, what are the networks that you need to have, how will you actually do that outreach? Ultimately, as these coordination hubs are stood up, I think a strong measure here of success is going to be whether the community itself, the individuals, are hearing about this and are able to find a place for themselves and plug in if they would like to.
And I'll just add on to that we also recognize that every state and territory is unique and they have their own opportunities, their own needs. And so that's part of the reason why we're trying to provide this this flexible approach, so that whatever is most appropriate within your locale is what you'll pursue.
Great, thank you. And somewhat related to these metrics of success, one of the other questions we've been asking, and this one I'll start with Nasser, please, is in the solicitation and the PAPPG, how can we think about evaluating? So are external evaluators required for this this competition?
Yeah, thank you, Elena. External evaluation is required because this is how you can assess and evaluate the success of the project. It is expected that the coordination hub will have a team of evaluation that will coordinate with the national lead to set the performance metrics that help assess and evaluate the success of the project activities. What reviewers will be looking for in terms of evaluation is one aspect of it is for example, can the project will be operate at the statewide level? Do the coordination hub have a strong and real partnership? And do they have a clean evaluation plan with matrices that set for measuring the success of the project activities? So in a nutshell, evaluation is expected and it needs to be coordinated with a national lead, and there should be a dedicated evaluation team, has to be external to the project to be able to provide a subjective assessment of the project activities, and hopefully that will help to continuously improve the project during the scope of the funding period.
I'll add just one piece to it, which is that the national lead, so you don't have all the pieces of what the national lead will do at this time. It just had in the solicitation very broad areas. But one of the functions is going to be coordinating across and connecting across the coordination hubs. So no doubt there's an element of that connected to evaluation, which should help both with efficiency and cost so that every coordination hub does not need to come up with some of the same items. And so that should hopefully help reduce the cost and the time for each coordination hub.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So this will be our last question about some of the logistics of submitting proposals. So Michal, if you could explain about the collaborative proposal requirements and what we're looking for in terms of the structure of these proposals for the state and territory hubs. Thanks so much.
Sure. So we've had lots of questions about collaborative proposals where we believe that some teams are asking, are we going to be competitive if we have only one organization? And the answer to that, if you look at the full scope of work and what a coordination hub should be doing, the answer is most likely you will not be competitive if you have only a single organization. Maybe you'll assess for yourself that you are, but look at the full scope of work and see if that seems feasible to you. But the other part of this question that we believe that some teams are asking is about the category called collaborative research proposals, or which are when you can submit a proposal instead of submitting as one lead organization and then subawards. More than one institution can submit to receive an award directly from NSF. So that's sort of the other way of doing it. So you can still have a lead, but instead of receiving the funds for the collaborating institutions as a subaward from the lead, you receive it directly from NSF. So in this program, we're not going to be going with that latter way of doing things. We're going to only be having a single institution submit a proposal, and then all of the institutions that they're collaborating with can receive subawards.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying that. We know that some of the terminology and definitions can be confusing in terms of what something means versus what it means for an NSF proposal. So thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides again for the final wrap up. Thank you to all our program directors for answering these questions and for everybody for submitting them as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ilana. So we mentioned a lot of times, we said the PAPG or the PAPPG. We referenced this in the first webinar, and it is referenced in the solicitation, but for those who are new to NSF, we'll put that link again into the chat. That is really your key to submitting proposals to NSF. So please do read through that very carefully. So we know that you probably have additional questions that are specific to your organization. Please feel free to continue emailing us at ai-ready@nsf.gov. We have been sorting through those and answering questions, and we'll continue to do that in an increasingly timely way. We also will be opening up office hours the week of May 4th and May 11th, and we'll have other ones ahead of the LOI submissions and proposal submissions. And that concludes our webinar. So thank you again very much for joining us today, and we look forward to speaking with prospective proposers over the coming weeks.